The expensive SUV was speeding down the highway toward town. Valerie had an appointment with a future partner, which forced him to interrupt his vacation and return to the city. The young man was nervous. Negotiations with this entrepreneur had been dragging on for months. It was now that he was ripe for conversation. It was a chance not to be missed. This is a noxious businessman and it is difficult to agree anything with him. The cell phone vibrated. It was the third call from the mother. Usually she called about trifles, so he didn't want to answer the phone, but maybe it was something urgent. This time he had to answer, but after a couple of minutes Valerie regretted it. His mother again told all sorts of nonsense, a beauty salon, some friend to whom she did not know what to give for her birthday. In the end the son could not stand. "Mom, I'm on the track and you with your nonsense, I thought something urgent," said Valerie. "Oh, well, since you're on the track, buy some homemade eggs, because the store eggs are boring," immediately asked his mother. Valerie quickly agreed and turned off the phone. He looked at his watch and grudgingly grimaced. There was not much time. But if he didn't buy these eggs, his mother would blow his brains out later. When he saw the peddlers near the curb, Valerie stopped. A few grandmothers and a grandfather were sitting there, but they didn't have any eggs. Valerie walked back and forth. Potatoes, apples, currants, something else from the garden, and several pairs of eyes looking at him, hoping he would buy something. The grandfather became especially excited when he saw that the gentleman hesitated and immediately started praising his goods. "Currants are sweet and juicy, they have a lot of vitamins, you can make jam," the grandfather said. "What jam? I have nothing to do," laughed Valerie. He looked at the bucket of currants with disgust and went to examine the goods at the old lady's. And in vain, the grandfather kept up the same healing berry, strengthens immunity, one can forget about colds, all useful properties. Meanwhile, the young man realized that these traders did not sell eggs, and became angry. He was wasting his time, and time is money. And the grandfather did not stop hoping to sell something and made him even angrier. Valerie is pissed off by people who want to scam him for money and think that if he is rich he can sell everything. The rich man freaked out and kicked the bucket, and without turning around he went to the car. And he would have forgotten about this misunderstanding, but the women behind him began to rumble and shout, "Help!" And all because of some currants, Valerie thought. And when he turned around, everything inside him went cold. Everywhere on the ground lying scattered currants, and the old man was lying on the ground and did not move. The old ladies were fussing around him, trying to bring him to his senses, and it looked like his grandfather had become ill. The rich man looked around, not knowing what to do. In a good way, you should probably help, but he was in a hurry, there was no time to be distracted, except that he could call an ambulance, if necessary. Valerie walked over and tried to assess the situation. Just then an old woman pounced on him with indignation. "You made Nikolai sick, he lives off these currants, and you ruined everything, they cannot sell them now, all scattered and crumpled." Another grandmother whispered that Nicholas died, his heart failed, and again they blamed the young man for everything. It was unpleasant for Valerie, he understood that you cannot just leave, you need to help. Fortunately, the grandmother who reported that the grandfather died, took a closer look at the old man and said that he was breathing. Valerie wanted to call an ambulance, but he quickly realized that it would be better if he took the old man to the hospital himself. It would save time and maybe it would save the grandfather's life. The old ladies agreed and helped him put the immobilized body into the car. Valerie, wasting no time, rushed to the hospital. He had already forgotten about the mother and the meeting, he was worried about the old man. After all, if he had restrained himself, if he had not kicked that bucket, there would not have been such problems. On the way he called an ambulance, explained the situation and asked where to take the patient. The grandfather was lying unconscious and unmoving the whole way. Valerie was not sure if he was still alive and drove, not paying attention to the signs. But to his relief, when he arrived at the hospital, he saw that the old man was breathing. Valerie raised everyone's ears to take care of the patient, and the doctors apparently decided that he was his relative. They ran right in and took him to the intensive care unit. They saw that the patient had been brought by a man with money and began to spread themselves in front of Valerie. And only when the data of the old man was asked, the young man said he had no idea who it was. He knew that his name was Nicholas and not exactly. Wait, then who will pay for the treatment will be, confused the nurse. Valerie wanted to say that it was none of his business, but feeling guilty, he decided to help until the end. Valerie had to find out who the old man was. But it soon became clear by itself, the wife of this Nikolai was found. Apparently those peddlers told her. And she started calling hospitals. Eventually she got through here. They said that since the grandfather has a policy and all the documents, it is already easier, it is supposed to treat for free. But you understand that there are no funds for all the medicines, said the doctor anxiously. And the patient better buy this medicine now. The doctor shoved a piece of paper in Valerie's hands. He said that so far the condition has stabilized, and then what will happen is not clear. The young man had to buy all the medications. They were inexpensive, but he was still not happy about this situation. He did not understand how some currants could cause a heart attack. If he had been so worried about such nonsense, he wouldn't have lived at all. He had a meeting gone wrong. That's a serious disorder. When Valerie was convinced that the old man was alive and there was no threat to his life now, he went to the car. He was no longer in a hurry, as he was no longer in time for the deal. He had missed such a chance, but there was nothing he could do. He did not even want to call this businessman, for sure he would be arrogant to him and would not accept any apologies. This man only likes to play by his own rules. Although the deal was extremely profitable, but the businessman himself was unpleasant, only because of the money he could be tolerated. Valerie sat in the car, leaned back on the seat, tried to calm down. When he picked up the phone, he made sure he didn't get a call from this frustrated partner, but there were 12 missed calls from his mother. Surely worried about his eggs, thought Valerie. And then his mother called again, hysterical. She mumbled something unintelligible as if she was not herself. Valerie demanded the mother to calm down. She exhaled and told him what was wrong. After this story, everything felt cold inside him. He just sat back and froze. His whole body was stiff and he couldn't move. It turned out that there had been a fire in the cafe where the meeting was to be held, and people had died. His mother naturally knew that he was going there. She always knew everything. She almost controlled his every move, was always worried about her son, even though he was 36. Valerie spent 3 hours with the old man. In the end, during this time the news about the fire had already had time to show on television, and on the internet, so immediately eyewitnesses published everything. Until the mother quickly got the news of the misfortune and she began to call her son, but he did not answer the phone. What thoughts could she have? When Valerie arrived home, it seemed to him that his mother turned gray. She was so nervous that she had to take a sedative. She almost buried her son, because no one ever gave any information about the victims. Only by morning Valerie learned that the businessman had died. In the end he realized that if he had not been late and was in the cafe at the meeting, he would have been on the list of the dead. It turns out that it was the old man who saved his life almost at the cost of his own. The next day Valerie went to check on the old man. He wanted to thank him and ask for forgiveness. The old man had gotten better. He was lying in a general ward. The doctors said that the guy brought him to the hospital in time and saved the elderly man's life. But Valerie knew that in fact 2 lives had been saved. He apologized to his grandfather and asked how he could help him. The old man was upset and almost cried, said that his grandmother had fallen ill recently, not walking, only hope for him. And now he was in the hospital, no one to take care of his wife. The elderly man was not worried about himself, although his health left much to be desired. He was afraid that his grandmother was left alone. A neighbor came to help, but she cannot every day, she has her own problems. And the elderly man, not yet able to come to his senses, and already wants to go home. They do not live richly, they do not have any savings. There was some money, but grandmother ran into crooks, paid some enterprising young people who promised to repair the roof. In the end, no money and no roof. And then she fell, fractured, recovered for a long time and has not yet recovered, and all the money goes to treatment. The old man started to sell the crops from the garden, it somehow saved him. Of course he was upset that the currants were gone, he was counting on them. He has no money at all, he still needs to reach his pension, otherwise he would have bought food. The young man took pity on his grandfather, gave him money and paid for his treatment. But with his grandmother he did not know what to do. The doctor said that they could not let the sick person go right now, they had not yet cured him. Valerie suggested that the grandfather find a nurse for his wife while he was in the hospital, promising that he would take care of the expenses. The rich man had mixed feelings, they pulled him out of his comfortable life, as if they showed him the underside. It was not his business, but he could not stop thinking about those old people. He shared this story with my mother, and she perked up. "Oh, and me and the girls were just looking for someone to help," she rejoiced. "It's fashionable now, at least we're distracted, give us these grandparents, we'll help them, and everyone will be happy." Mother wasn't particularly interested in the history of these old men, she wanted more for herself, but why not? No matter what the motives, the main thing is that in the end the help will come to the one who needs it and the mother will be distracted from her foolishness for a while. My son told me where grandfather Nikolai was and my mother organized a delegation of her rich friends. Grandfather was treated to the highest standard, his grandmother was found a nurse, the roof was also taken care of. The elderly people could not believe their happiness. Even though they were being PR'd on, they didn't care. Help comes in many forms. If God chose to reward them in this way, they would gladly accept it.